Good morning and welcome to this week's Munch and Learn. We are joined with Russell. Good morning, Russell.
Morning, David. You well? Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Very well, thank you. So Russell is the head of the direct division for Fidelity Energy. Is that right? Have I got your title right?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Okay, I took it off of LinkedIn. But,
head
of direct division for Fidelity Energy. So Fidelity Energy are based in Newbury. They're a local company looking to change how businesses procure their energy. They not only provide procurement service, but also provide all the other services you'd expect from one of the UK's leading utilities and energy consultants. So do you want to just introduce yourself, give us a bit of background about who you are and a little bit of background about Fidelity Energy, Russell, please?
Yeah, sure. So I've been with the company just over 2.5 years now. Fidelity itself is coming up to 9 years old. It was founded originally by our MD and some investors who was telecoms, very big in telecoms with Gamma and Vodafone, and they couldn't understand why the process, the service for energy procurement wasn't the same as telecoms, very process driven, very automated. So they set about changing that, hence why we say change the way business procure their energy, to make it automated, to make it much more streamlined, and ultimately to provide a better service because, going back 9 years, the energy industry was a bit like the Wild West. There wasn't much regulation, and it was quite unruly. Since then, obviously, we've come a long way. We've invested very heavily in technology. We're one of only 2 brokers in the UK that have access to Electrolink and ExoServe, which are 2 national databases. That gives us a good competitive advantage over everybody else because when we're quoting, we can quote on accurate data, accurate readings as opposed to estimates. And on the back of that, we've built some very strong relationships with the 27 energy suppliers we work with. A lot of people have heard of the big 6, but we work with a lot of companies that you won't have heard of because they'll only work through brokers. So again, we can get a good spread of the market, which allows us to get much better pricing than individuals, companies will get going direct. And most recently, we've set up the EBA, the Energy Buyers Association, which is led by our founder member, which is John RMD, and some of the other brokers. And basically that's there to protect businesses and to protect us as brokers, and a little bit of pushback on the energy companies with some of the practices that are going on in the industry. We're trying to eliminate the verbal contracts, the verbal LOAs, because they're just wrong, basically, and people are getting tied up with them. So it provides a bit of protection, a bit of comfort blanket for businesses, and at the same time it protects us as brokers because we want to be transparent, we want to be clear, and we want to be giving honest advice and have that advice taken seriously. So in a nutshell, that's where we've come from. My background predominantly has been in hospitality. I've always been involved in sales throughout that process. So it was a natural step to come to Fidelity. I was working at a tech company before this, doing a similar role. And as we're very tech driven here, it just fits very nicely.
Very good. So a nice local company doing a good service by their clients and the people you serve, because it's an unregulated sector, isn't it? The energy market, the broker side of it.
Yeah, it is and it isn't. So we've got Ofgem. We've got Ofgem, which is there. There isn't a lot of teeth in it. It is there to protect. We need more regulation. There are still some practices taking place that shouldn't be. And I guess it's the same as any industry. There's always bad apples, and there's some activities going on that need stamping out. So we were one of the first brokers to lead with our commission, so we're very clear on how we get paid. We were the first broker in the UK to sign up to the new ombudsman service because, again, we believe that's the right thing to do. So we've got some regulation. We need more, and that's coming hopefully, and hopefully this new group that's been set up can lead on that.
Okay, very good, very good. So as a commercial energy broker in the UK, we understand that you're probably going to have some valuable insights into the current and future energy markets, and obviously small to medium business owners are particularly interested in understanding these markets. It's not something that they necessarily have a lot of knowledge over because they're not experts in it. So if we just dive into a few questions that we've been asked from the community, feel free to elaborate on them and we'll sort of dig in a bit deeper if there's something relevant to talk about. But one of the first questions that came up, and it's a bit of a sort of 3 questions in one, but are there any recent policy changes and regulations in the energy market? how are they likely to impact small to medium businesses? And then what should they be aware of moving forward?
There aren't any real policies that are coming in. Obviously, the government are working a lot closer with the energy companies, given the recent activity of the market. So the energy caps have been put in place. So I say energy cap, the energy bill relief scheme we had, and then there's a new scheme in place now. I think the key thing to remember is that domestic energy is completely different to commercial energy. So in domestic energy, we have an energy cap which protects us, and it can only go so high. In the commercial world, that doesn't exist. So if the prices go up, they go up very quickly. We're in a market where they fall very slowly, a bit like what you see at the petrol pumps. In terms of regulation, what they're trying to do is make it very clear coming up that everybody has to declare their commissions and how they get paid. That's old news to us. We've been doing that for a number of years, but there are a lot of energy brokers out there that aren't. And Ofgem are quite keen for that to happen. So it's very clear when people are paying the bill, what they're being paid to third parties, or what third parties, TPIs as we call them, are being paid by the energy company. And that's in an attempt to weed out some of these massive commissions that have been paid, and the activity that some of the brokers have been up to. And you may have seen in the news recently, one of the guys has been sent to prison because obviously he was ripping off children's homes and charities. And that's the sort of thing that we're trying to weed out, and that's where the legislation is coming from.
Yeah, it makes sense. And what do you think sort of small businesses should be aware of moving forward? What should they be looking for?
I think ultimately they need to find a reputable broker. There's always a stigma around brokers, and what you pay them and how much it costs. Actually, it's the amount they can save you, and the advice they can give you. The energy market at the moment is just a mess. There is so much going on, and whilst it's stabilized, it's still exceptionally fragile, and it's very easy to get caught out with the bad advice. So they should be looking for a reputable broker that's doing all the things they should be doing and giving them the best advice. And ultimately, yes, they're going to pay a fee for it, like they would if they went to a solicitor or an architect or anybody else. But that broker ultimately will get them on the best deal and potentially save them money going forward.
Yeah, it's such a minefield out there, isn't there? It's easy to get lost in the analysis and then end up making a decision based on confusion and not really knowing what you're looking at.
Yeah, look, we're not perfect, Dave. We don't get it right all the time. We get it right most of the time. Pre the crisis, we got it right 99% of the time. If I had a crystal ball now, we wouldn't be talking on the phone now. We'd be sat on the beach. And we do this day in, day out, and have up to 5 to 7 market reports coming through on an hourly basis, and we're still guessing some of the time because the market is still so volatile. So as somebody trying to do it on their own who doesn't deal in energy, it must be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, I imagine it is. What about renewable energy? So there's obviously an increasing adoption of renewable energy sources. How do you think energy prices and contracts are expected to evolve in the near future? And again, what can local businesses do to take advantage of these changes?
So I think renewable energy is a really hot topic at the moment. I'm not going to go down the route of climate change and global warming because it's a very hot topic at the moment in terms of what you see flying about on social media. We need to be on renewable energy. The gas and oil reserves is a finite reserve. It's going to run out at some stage. Renewable is the right thing to do. The UK has invested very heavily in wind. Again, we had a choice between wind and solar. We've done a bit of both, but we've majored on wind. Unfortunately, the last 3 years have been the least windiest years that we've had. Right. And the danger is with wind or solar, it's unreliable. So if it's not a windy day, you don't generate. If it's not a sunny day, you don't generally generate. I think the future where we're going to need to go is with nuclear, and not necessarily the big plants that take 12 years to build from scratch. I'm talking about the small modular ones that we can have up and running in a couple of years. People will argue, is that green energy? Well, it's clean energy. We know how to deal with it, and it's certainly sustainable and it's certainly reliable. And that will feed in then to the market, and hopefully we'll start seeing the prices drop off. The danger we have, it's a bit antiquated. So the price is set for energy based on the most expensive way of producing energy, which is burning gas. So unfortunately, we can produce renewable as in wind or hydro or solar much cheaper than we can by burning gas. But unfortunately, that's the price where it's set, and that's set across Europe. So until the government step in and change that, we're going to be stuck with those prices. I think the other part of the question, where do you see the prices going? Will the prices drop? We'll certainly never see them pre-war again, pre-pandemic. Will we drop from where we are at the moment? The average at the moment is anywhere between 25p and 30p. We might break that in a couple of years' time, but certainly for the next 3-4 years, we're going to be seeing these prices. There'll be the daily fluctuation that we see, but they're going to be thereabouts. We're not going to see any big drop-offs. Obviously, the fear is the winter period. If we have a bad winter, we could see prices go up again next year. We've yet to see the retaliation from Russia for the sanctions, and we believe he'll wait till winter for that because it'll have a bigger impact. We've already seen the ships sniffing around our infrastructure. So all these things are keeping the market very fragile, and the response in the market on a daily basis is quite dramatic. A good example of that in the news last week, the Australians announced a strike at their LNG port. The prices jumped 25% the next morning. They've come back again, so the market's reacting very quickly to the slightest bit of news.
There is so much going on out there that can influence the energy costs, isn't there? The energy prices, so many variables and so many moving parts. It's interesting.
And I think the big thing is, sorry, Dave, I think the big thing is, what you read in the media, just be very careful. Certainly, and that's a really good piece of advice to your business community listening. Don't believe everything you read in the media. The media have got a couple of jobs, and that's scaremongering and sensationalizing. These prices, make sure you speak to a reputable broker and ask what's actually going on, because what you read in the paper isn't always right.
Yeah, very true, very true. So we're not going to see a significant drop off in energy prices. So efficiency is going to be a big concern for most businesses out there, not only for sort of sustainability, but also to reduce to cost today for them. So what would you say are the key energy efficiency initiatives and technologies that sort of small business to medium-sized businesses should consider implementing at the moment?
So yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the cheapest kilowatt you use is the one that you don't use, clearly. The price isn't going anywhere, as we said, so the only way people are going to save money is by reducing their consumption. There are a number of very simple things to do, considering have you changed to LED bulbs? Sounds obvious, but you'd be amazed how many people haven't. It's not that expensive, and the savings are quite good. Simple things, if you're in a big office space, are computers and laptops turned off overnight. Now, each laptop left on overnight will cost you an extra £12 a year. You've got 100 laptops in an office, that soon adds up. So little things like that have been about being smarter with your procedures and how you work. Then you can start looking if you've got the availability to generate, so self-generating, so things like solar panels. If you've got the facility, they're a great investment. The return on investment is much better than it was. We used to look at around about 7 to 8 years payback. Given where the prices are, you're probably looking at between 1 and 3 years now, depending on the size. So that's a good investment. We can couple that with battery storage, which has come a long way. They're still quite big, they're still quite bulky, they're still quite expensive, but it is an option to look at. And another one is voltage optimization, which can be fitted in most businesses. And basically all that does is, in the UK, everything's designed to run particularly at 330. It doesn't need to, it can run at 220 volts. A lot of the time it's running at 240, 245. So you're using extra energy that you just don't need. Now, the long-term effect of that is it reduces the lifespan of your equipment. But in the short term, by optimizing that, you can reduce the amount of energy used and reduce your cost. We're seeing payback on the voltage optimization of about 2 years at the moment. And it can save up to 19%, but the average is around about 11% saving per annum on usage, which can be some big numbers for some businesses. So they're kind of the key things. But ultimately, it's about having your policies and procedures in place. If you don't want to spend the capital on some of those projects, just look at your business and how you're operating. Do you need for a hospitality business, you open at 12, do you need all the lights burn at 10 o'clock in the morning while you're setting up? Simple things like that, just about being smarter on how you use your energy. As I mentioned about, can you move some of your workload to an evening when the energy prices are cheaper? Does it have to be fired up at 7 o'clock in the morning when it's really expensive? All those things. It's about looking at your business and understanding what the data is and what the numbers are. And certainly with commercial businesses where they've got half-hour meters, we can pull that data off because we link into the databases, and we can show you where you're using your energy the most, so we can help you be more efficient with it. And it may be that we change your practices around to make it cheaper for you. So there are lots of things you can do. Some of it very practical for yourself, some of it you'll need help with.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, actually, because those little things you kind of gloss over, don't you? Like leaving the printer on standby and leaving the computers on overnight.
Yeah.
in isolation, it seems insignificant, doesn't it? But like you say, if you've got 100 laptops or 100 computers in the office, it makes a big difference over a long period of time.
Huge.
I heard a story as well. I'm not sure how true this is, but also in terms of online storage, it's not necessarily going to impact the cost of the local business, but actually having loads of stuff stored on a cloud generates more energy being used by the servers that store that information. So if you hold on to old data and things, just by clearing your old cloud history and things like that, helps to reduce some of the energy usage by these server rooms and things.
I did not know that. You see,
Yeah,
that's every day's a school day.
Sort of things, do you?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Which makes sense, doesn't it? It's got to be stored somewhere, so there's got to be some cooling and something running to store that document from 15 years ago that you're never going to use again. All those old videos. So you mentioned energy storage solutions around batteries and things like that. So they seem to be gaining popularity, and I know in the sort of domestic market, there's the batteries with solar panels and things like that. So, you know, as a way of sort of reduce or managing your energy consumption and sort of using cheaper energy, spreading it out. Can you share any sort of insights around where we are today and then future sort of energy storage opportunities for small business and medium-sized businesses?
Yeah, I think it all boils down to around what we call a smart grid and the smart meters. There's a misconception around smart meters that people think they're going to, you plug them in and you're going to start saving money, particularly in the domestic space. That's not what they're designed for. Ultimately, long term, you hopefully will save money. So the idea of a smart meter is to allow the grid to better forecast when the demands are going to be. If they can forecast it better, they can manage it better. Let's not forget the grid at the moment is not fit for purpose. It's built back in I don't know, when Adam was a lad. It's at breaking strain, and we're trying to integrate modern technology into something that's very old and antiquated. And when we talked earlier about renewable energy, because of the unreliable nature of renewable energy, you get surges of when you can have it and when you can't. And ultimately, what we want the grid to do is as a flat constant, so that we can predict when the peak's going to be. That's where battery storage comes into its own. So yes, the technology is there. It's evolving very quickly. They're still quite big and bulky and they're still quite expensive. But like anything, the more it's used, the better that's going to get, the cheaper it will get. And by storing energy that's used from solar, instead of paying it back to the grid, you can store it in batteries on site and use it for yourself. The export contracts are still there for solar, and not many businesses produce enough power to mitigate all their own usage and then sell some back to the grid. And if you do that, the grid will only buy it back at about 12p. They'll charge you 26p for it, but they'll only sell it back to you at 12p. So yes, it can be a little bit of a revenue stream, but you're better off saving that energy if you can store it in batteries and use it in your own business when you're having to dip into the grid. Is it going to be mainstream? I don't think so for a while. A lot of people use things like solar to power their EV chargers, save drawing from the grid. A lot of them use it to store overnight, so they can charge their batteries overnight while the energy is cheap, and then use that during the day. That's the most prominent one at the moment. So at night time you're paying, I don't know, 15p for your energy, as opposed to during the day you're paying 30p for it. So you charge your batteries overnight while it's cheap, deploy them in the daytime. So using less of the peak time energy. That's where I think we'll see it come to the front.
So you mentioned smart meters. Is that similar to what you were saying earlier around giving people the data to be able to look at where their energy is being consumed, like turning off that computer at night and things like that? Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ultimately what we're after is data, so we can see the patterns. We live in a modern world, and data drives everything. So if we can see when the main usage is, we can have a look at that and see actually why are you using 100 kilowatts at 9 o'clock at night when the business is closed, and it allows me to say to you, look, David, there's an issue here, using a lot of power when your business is closed. What is it? And you can go, yeah, I didn't know that. Let's go investigate. You find, you've got air conditioner left on that's running, you've got printers on, whatever it may be. But without that data, without that information, you probably never would have picked that up.
So thinking about, the services that you offer, if we've got an example where somebody comes to you to start with to look at going with you for their energy costs, through to you then actually taking them, onboarding them, and then helping them to reduce their energy. What does that journey look like for a typical small to medium sized business for you?
So first of all, it's a conversation, a quick conversation to understand, where they are in the buying cycle. Have they got any pain points? Have there been issues? Have they used brokers before? What are they looking to achieve? Is the business looking to expand? Is it looking to contract? Is it looking to stay as it is? Just getting to know the business a little bit better, because without that information, we're just going blind. And I think that's what sets us apart from a lot of brokers, is actually taking that time to understand the business rather than just saying, this is your tariff. Once we've done that, we get a copy of the bill or the renewal statement, and from there we can pull all the information we need. If it's a normal commercial meter, we have a portal that we built ourselves that hooks into those 27 energy companies. We can add the meter, and I can literally have a quote back to you within 10 minutes. And what our portal does, it goes to all those 27 energy companies. It looks through hundreds of price plans, thousands of term offers, and it picks out the most competitive ones for you. Now, we get paid the same by all the energy companies, so we're not tied to any particular one. We've got no allegiance to one. What's important is that we get the right price and the right package for you as a business. Not that's what's right for us, because actually it doesn't really matter for us. But it is really important that we get the right package for you. From there, if you say, yes, we'd like to go ahead with that, we send a contract. Again, this is all done through DocuSign, and the contract will come through our portal. You digitally sign it. That gives you a copy, it gives us a copy, it protects you, protects us. And then we submit that to the energy company. What's important to remember is that your contract isn't with us as Fidelity Energy. We're just the broker. Your contract will always be with the energy company. We have just brokered that contract for you. Now, because during this process, we'll have had a letter of authority signed from you, we don't do anything without that. That letter of authority simply gives us permission to go to market on your behalf and find out the publicly available information. It allows us to serve termination on your behalf to your current contract, and it allows us to set up a new contract on your behalf. What it does not do, what it absolutely does not do, is allow us to sign anything on your behalf and agree anything on your behalf. So once we've got the contract signed back from you, we'll serve notice with your current, if we switch in with your current supplier, set up a new contract with your new supplier, and that's it. So hopefully that process is all taking place in the background, and all you've had to do is have a 5-minute conversation with me and send me a copy of your bill. Outside of that, we've done all the work in the background. Now, if the meter is called a half-hour industrial meter, it's a slightly different process. Those we have to send out for what's called bespoke pricing. So the process is still the same. We have the conversation, we get details of the meter, we get the letter of authority. We then go out to our suppliers and say, can you tender this for us? That process takes 5 working days. We reduce that from 2 weeks because of the relationship we have with them. That price comes back, and then again, we present the prices and our recommendations, and then the process is exactly the same. You say, yes, you want to go ahead, we send the contracts, and we do the same process. So it's a very simple onboarding process designed to take away all the stress and hassle that we can from you guys. So you've got a little involvement as you need to have. All the while knowing that obviously what we've put in front of you is the best fiduciary advice we can give you.
Certainly sounds a lot easier than going out and doing it on your own.
You've heard this story before, David, the networking that we do, but I think it's really important. So I worked with an FD, and this FD was quite set in his ways, and I had a conversation with him, and I said, look, can we help you with it? No, I do it myself. I've done it every year. I know exactly what I'm doing. And we went backwards and forwards. In the end, I said, look, just amuse me. You asked for price, I'll ask for price, and let's compare. And he agreed, reluctantly agreed, and I put price in front of him that was significantly cheaper than what he could get. And he said, how have you done that? I said, because it's what we do every day, all day in, all day out. We've got the relationships. I said, how long do you normally spend? He said, it usually takes months to get the contract. I said, look, we've done this in 5 days for you. Anyway, he signed up with us, and he's been a customer for a while now. And that's just the value of using a broker. And he was so skeptical about brokers, about what it would cost, whether he would get ripped off. And hopefully we've managed to secure a customer for a long time there, just by proving to him that actually it's not a bad thing to use a broker. He knew exactly how much we were being paid by the energy company. He was happy with that because he was still getting a much cheaper price than he could get by himself. So it was a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, certainly makes a lot of sense. You're right. There's a bit of a stigma around brokers and things like that in various different industries, isn't there? But ask around, speak to reputable brokers, people like yourselves, get advice, and make an informed decision from there.
Yeah, I think it's really important, isn't it? I mean, I don't know anything about I don't know, about plumbing. I wouldn't dream of trying to do it myself. I'd get a plumber
Yeah.
in, and if I want an extension on my house, I wouldn't try and draw it on a piece of paper. I'd get an architect. It's just what we do. If you're poorly, you go to the doctor. So many
Makes
people
perfect
try and do energy themselves, and quite often get it wrong and get it badly wrong, and it does end up costing them.
Makes perfect sense. So have you got any, just to sort of summarize and wrap up, have you got any sort of final tips, hints, suggestions that you could offer to small to medium-sized businesses to help them really look after their costs, reduce as much as possible, and sort of stay abreast of the market changes and the environment we're in?
Yeah, I think number one tip is always find a reputable broker. That's going to be the key thing. We once we've onboarded a customer, and even when we haven't onboarded them, we keep in regular contact with market updates. The market has stabilized. It's flattened out. It is starting to creep up again, but it's exceptionally fragile. Be careful with what you're doing. Don't bury your head in the sand is the key one. There are a lot of businesses out there still thinking that the energy price is going to come down, the government's going to step in and do something. Neither of those two things are going to happen in the near future. And by the near future, I mean the next 2 to 5 years. Always ensure you're on a fixed price. There are some pass-throughs and there are some flexes out there which are costing people a lot of money. The initial look at them, they seem cheaper. Get yourself on a fixed price contract. My advice would be a minimum 2 years at the moment. Probably 2 years is the sweet spot because that's where the market is. And just make sure that you're doing everything you can within your business to reduce the cost. As we mentioned earlier, it sounds insignificant, the odd computer, but when you add them all up and you look around your business, it's amazing how much that adds up. And get the data. If you've got the time, or speak to your broker, get the broker to get your data of when you're using your energy, when you're consuming your energy, and look at the patterns within your business. And quite often you'd be amazed at what you're using when you don't think you should be, and you can go and investigate and make some significant savings.
Perfect. Sage advice, sage advice. So,
sage advice.
Russell, thank you very much for your expertise and your time today. For anybody watching this recording, I highly suggest you go out and speak to a reputable broker. Russell was an active member of our No Limits business community. So should you want to talk to Russell, reach out, connect with him through the community chat direct. I'm sure he'd be happy to talk you through where you're at with your energy. Russell, thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day.
Pleasure. Thank you, David.